Graphing quadratics in Excel. Many quadratic functions are quick to graph using an f of x table, but some are very tedious. And we can use Excel to quickly graph any quadratic function. So here's my function, f of x equals x squared plus 2, and I want to graph it using Excel. So the first thing is I want to create what looks like an XY table in Excel. So the first column is going to be my x, the second column my f of x. And I'm just typing in titles. I'm not actually typing in anything for Excel to do yet. And so I can put titles in like that. And then I want to think about what is this going to look like when I graph it. And I expect it to be sort of, do you see? Because of that x squared, I expect it to have a parabola shape. So I know when I graph, I really expect something to be on both sides of my y-axis. So I can use some values that are negative and some values that are positive. So it's important to know that before you go into Excel so that you can make your graph come out not just one side, but you get both sides of it. So we want to try some values, like say maybe -4, -3, and I want to continue going on in that order. So I'll select those two. To do that, I click on the first one and then hold down my mouse button and just move my mouse down, and now it's highlight both of them. I go to the bottom right corner. Do you see where that changes? It's a big white plus there, and it becomes a little black plus here with no arrows. That's what I want. And then I push down my mouse button and I drag it down, and you can see there on the right where it says a little 0 in a box, and if I go down one more it shows me 1. It's telling you what the number is. So I'm going to go all the way until it shows me 4, because that's what I started with, -4, and I want to see what this is going to look like. So those are just x values. I could choose anything I want for the x's, and then I just have to plug them into my equation to find the f of x part. So my f of x is defined to be x squared plus 2. So here in the box right next to the x, I want to calculate the matching f of x. So I'll say equals, and then I want to take whatever I have over there for the x. So I'll click on it. That's my x, and then I use the caret 2 to mean squared, and then I just say plus 2. So that is basically, if you think of that a2 as your x squared plus 2. And that's what my function is over here on the paper. So when I push enter, let's think about it before we do. So we have -4, just because it's always good to double check your Excel work just so that you don't make big errors and it just doesn't even occur to you. So we're putting in a -4, so that means I should have f of -4 equals -4, that's my x, I want to square that, and then plus 2. So -4 quantity squared, remember, is the same thing as -4 times -4, and when I multiply those I get a positive 16. I still have that plus 2 on both lines, so I get an 18. So I expect to get 18 for my y. So when I push enter over here, we'll try that out and see if we get 18 for the y. And we did. So now I know that I calculated correctly for this one. And what I'm going to do is just click on that 18, the cell that has the 18 in it, go to the bottom right, and I'm going to drag it down to all my other values. And what it's doing, let's take a look. If I click on any cell and do Control tilde, it's going to show me the function values. And I'm going to come over here and show you the control key and then the tilde key. So if I do those two, that will click, it'll convert from function value to numbers to function to numbers. So here I have the function values, and you can probably see, if I can get a cursor over here, you can see that a2 squared plus 2, a3 squared, which is right over here, plus 2, a4 squared, which is right here, plus 2. So Excel will automatically move down, move down, move down for you, and that's perfect. I'm going to go back to Control tilde. I just wanted you to see what I had there. There we go. Back to the numbers view now. So I did Control tilde to go back to the numbers view. So here's all my values, and I want to plot that. I'd like to use a scatter plot, so I'll select all my data, and then I'll go to Insert, and it is a type of chart, and it's a scatter plot that we want. So pick Scatter Plot, and I want the one that's going to show me a line that follows all my points. I could just have it go as just the dots, but I know that it's going to be a parabola, so I want to see the whole thing graphed, and there you can see it. And because I picked some values in the negative numbers, I have this left-hand side of my parabola, and because I picked some values in the positive numbers, I have this right-hand side. Now, if I slide my graph over, just maybe, I can't slide it at all, we'll go this way. You can see that series 1 there on the right, and you can just click that and then push your delete button and get rid of that. That doesn't really help us at all. There are quick layouts if you have one of the newer versions of Word, and if you click on there, we can use that first layout. That's pretty nice because it gives us a chart title and axis titles. It put back in that series thing, so I can just delete that again. And then I'm going to slide over a little so we can see more of our parabola. And this one, because there wasn't an application, I can just put in that this is f of x equals, and then it's x squared. And it's a little hard to do that without the equation editor, so I'll just put x caret 2 and then plus 2. And when I push enter, I know it's not beautiful, but at least I have the function name here. And then this axis is my x-axis, so I'll just type x. This axis is my y, or my f of x axis, so I'll just put f of x for that one. And oops, that didn't come out very good. Let's try it one more time. F of x. There we go. That looks a lot better. And then I see that it capitalized the f for me, so I'm going to change it to a lowercase f again because we just always use it as lowercase. So there's my function, x on the one side, f of x on the other. Now when I want to put that onto my homework or print it or something like that, I can just click on the graph, the chart, and do Control-C for copy, and then come to the place I want to paste it and either say paste or Control-V, and it'll just put it right there in the file for me, and then I can print that off if it's a Word document or whatever. These graphs go on and on in that direction. Now I want to graph f of x equals 6x squared plus 4x minus 5 using Excel. So I have this sheet that I was using, and I could say this one is x squared plus 2. And that's the title of my sheet. I can come to a new sheet because I want to start another graph. And I can just call this one, I could just say number 2 because this doesn't really matter, but it'll give me a title at least. And then I need an x column and an f of x column. And in my x column, remember I'm just going to pick several numbers. I could maybe start with -10. And I'm not sure how many numbers I need, so maybe -9 next. And then I want to select those two. So click on one, drag down to the other, then let go with your mouse. Move down to the bottom right corner and drag it down, and you can see the numbers increasing. I'm watching until I get to 10 so that I have sort of the same amount of numbers on either side of 0. And I may find out that I want to adjust that, but for now that's a good starting point. And then I want to use this function. So first thing, I have to tell Excel I'm going to calculate, so I put in an equals to tell it this is a function you have to calculate. And then I want to do 6 times, I have to put in the times, and then click on my x, which is that -10, and then square it. And then plus 4 times and that's from this 4x. Now I want to multiply by that negative 10 one more time, and then finally minus 5. Now before we go too far, let's calculate that one out and see. If I do f of negative 10, it should be 6 times negative 10 squared plus 4 times negative 10 minus 5. And negative 10 quantity squared is negative 10 times negative 10, which is a positive 100, and I'm still multiplying by that 6 out front. Positive 4 times negative 10 will give me negative 40, and then I have a negative 5 there, so I have 600 minus 45, so 555, and that is my f of negative 10. That's a big number, and when I have a quantity squared, I do expect my numbers to grow large very quickly, and you can see that's where the biggest part of that number came from. So I got a positive 555. Let's push enter and see what we get on the Excel sheet. Positive 555. So I have a comparison there that my Excel was calculating correctly, and that's really important to do when you have several terms, because sometimes the order of operations doesn't come out right. Okay, now I want to just drag that one down, so I click on the 555, go to the bottom right, and look for that little black plus and drag it all the way down. I can see my numbers are giant, and I can see that somewhere in between here I'm crossing, I have some negative values, and then I'm coming back positive. So if I want to, I can just go from, say, negative 5 to positive 4, and that gives me a nice range of numbers there to graph. I don't have to use all of them to graph, but this will give me a nice shape here. So then I will insert, remember, and then charts, and then a scatter plot with lines to connect it. So there it is, and there's my parabola, and you can see that the lowest point is somewhere over here between 0 and negative 1 in the x direction. And I want to change it before I bother deleting that. Let's change the quick layout to the first layout, delete that series, click on the title. Now I don't have to select and delete and all that. It assumes, Excel assumes that as soon as I click on chart title that I'm going to replace what was there. So when I type the first letter, everything else goes away. So the first thing I want to do is f of x equals 6x squared plus 4x minus 5. And you can see that up here in what I'm typing, and down here it still says chart title, but once I push enter, it'll update. And there it is. Now my axis title, that one's x. So I pushed X and then enter, and then the vertical axis, that is my f of x, and push enter. And boy, doesn't that look nice. Now the only thing missing, of course, is arrows. I really should have arrows on the ends. So I'll do Control C here, and then I'll paste it. And once I've pasted it, then I can add in on this what I'm using here, I can just draw in my arrows, and maybe better with my pen. And then I can draw in arrows here on the other end too. So I can put the arrows on by hand. They do not have to be perfect, but they really should be there. There we go, sort of an arrow. And anyway, now I have my arrows. One more to look at. And we'll call this one number 3. So we're starting off, and it's another quadratic, so I expect another parabola, and I can tell it's quadratic because of the squared on the x. That's the highest degree term, and that tells me it's going to be a parabola. So I know I need an x column and an f of x column. Start with Say -5. We know, remember that these are going to get big very quickly. Oops, not 6. Try -4. And I put in 2 numbers, and then it can see the pattern, like what I want it to do with those numbers. I want it to increase by 1. So there it is increasing. Go all the way to +5. And then go to the f of x column. Now I want to put in the -x². So we'll start off with equals, always, to tell Excel we're going to calculate. And then negative, click on the x, caret 2 for squared. And then +4, click on the x again. Oops. Oh, I have to say times. Click on the x again, and then +3. Okay, so I think I have it. Let's just recap. Equals negative. Clicked on my x, which was a2, squared, +4 times, I had to put in the times or it just thought I was finished, a2, and then +3. So push enter, and I get 8. So let's double check that by hand, just at least for one of them. So we're looking at f of -5, and we want -5 squared +4 times -5 +3. So -5 quantity squared is -5 times -5, so that comes to 25, and I have this negative out front that needs to carry down, and then I have 4 times -5, so it's -20, and then +3. So -25 plus -20 is -45, plus 3 is -42. Now that's not what I got. So let's take a look. I messed something up. So looking in this formula, we might need to put parentheses here around the quantity being squared, because we want to apply the negative after we do the squaring. So that, remember, that negative had to stay out front, and then I had to square whatever my x was. So this will force it to do it in the right order. And then +4 times a2. I think this will work. Let's try enter now. -42. Now it worked. Okay, so now you see why it's really important to check it by hand and be very, very careful on that check so that you can make sure that you're calculating correctly before you drag them all down. So I click back on that -42, go to the bottom right, push and drag all the way down. Ooh, and you can kind of see a pattern, like here, there's -2, and 3, 3. So the center is right around here somewhere. So I might want to carry this down just a little bit further until -18 at least. So now I can go from -3 to +7. Do you see how that's kind of symmetrical? And let's look at, if we insert a chart, scatter, I'm going to do a parabola with a scatter plot with a line, and this one's upside down. And do you see where it's being turned upside down is that negative that's out front? So we have an upside down parabola, and we want to turn the chart layout into layout 1, get rid of the series, and then I'm ready to fix my chart title. So I click on it, and then I just start typing f of x equals -x squared plus 4x plus 3. And then when I push enter, it'll update what I have on my chart. And there it is. So I can see it's not pretty, but at least it tells me what my function is. Change your x-axis title to be x, and your y-axis title to be f of x, because this parabola passes the vertical line test, doesn't it? Good. So push enter, and there's f of x and x for the horizontal. Okay, click on that one, and then Control C, and then paste, or Control V over here. And then last step, we want to draw in some arrows so that we can indicate this does go on and on. This one in particular in a downward direction.